It's Justice with Jordan Simone. Talk about truth and equality. It's Justice with Jordan Simone. Come open up your mind, let your soul be free. It's Justice with Jordan Simone. Justice. It's Justice with Jordan Simone. Come open up your mind, let your soul be free. It's Justice with Jordan Simone. Justice. It's Justice with Jordan Simone.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Justice with Jordan, to our very first show. My name is Jordan Williams. I will be your host. A little bit about me. I am super interested in social justice back during the first summer of 2020 when the pandemic was really underway and there were lots of Black Lives Matter protests. I was super interested in supporting my community and advocating for Black people as best I could because I understood the issues that we were all going through. However, I also know that Black people are not a monolith. We hold other identities besides just, being Black. We're also Black and older, we're Black and younger, we're Black and gay, we're Black and queer, we're Black and abled. We are so many things besides just being Black. And that really spurred me on to care about other marginalized identities, as I myself identify both as Black, queer, and a woman. And so while I was interested in learning about all of these marginalized identities, I got really into making content on social media, namely TikTok. So I made a few videos just kind of about being a Black woman of color, being a Black queer woman, and it kind of took off from there. And I learned that most people are not ever trying to attack you from a place of hurt. Most people are trying to engage with you with their limited understandings. And so I felt that if I could help educate 1, 2, maybe 3 people, that all of my work was worth something. And lo and behold, my TikTok career took off and people wanted long form content. And so I am bringing long form content to you right here with my show, Justice with Jordan Simone. So I am your host, Jordan Simone. And thank you all so much for coming here to learn and grow with me. So today's topic, very first episode, it's Black History Month. I think it's super important that we go over why we should always capitalize the B in Black. That very first letter should be capitalized like all other proper nouns. The B in Black should always be capitalized. So a little bit of background on why I think that's so important, because we all need to know our history. It's Black History Month, the shortest month of the year. But what can you do? Low key, I recently learned that we kind of chose Black History Month to be in February. It originally started off as Negro History Week from 1926 onward, and it was called Negro History Week because it was the beginning of Abraham Lincoln's birthday, which we know we all love Abe. Shout out to him for the Emancipation Proclamation. And then it ended with Frederick Douglass's birthday. So we decided that that week was going to be the week that Black people really celebrated ourselves, loved ourselves, celebrated our history for that week. Years and years and years later, about 50 years later, President Gerald Ford decided that, you know what, the whole month should be a Black celebration. And so he decided that Black History Month was going to be every February. And from that point on, all the presidents that followed him decided that Black History Month was going to be every February. And now it just is. In other countries, it's not always February. I recently learned that in the United Kingdom, it's actually in October. But here in the United States, where I am, it is Black History Month. So happy Black History Month to all of my lovely Black folk out there. However, Black History Month is almost the only time we ever use the term Black without it being like a huge issue. And so because we call it Black History Month, because it started off as that Negro History Week and we had those roots, we decided that Negro history wasn't something we wanted to keep. That Negro History Week was something that we really wanted to make more, I guess, politically correct for the time it was in. And so we changed it to Black History Month to encompass all of Black people as a whole. However, that's the only time we do use that B in, or that Black history instead of African American. A lot of us got derailed along the way. we decided that African American and Black people were synonyms. And in all honesty, they're just not. Not all Black people identify with being African American. Um, Black people, again, are not a monolith. And so growing up, I know that in my perspective, I remember being in high school, of course, going through the motions, learning about Black History Month, the same six figures, Black Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, the whole collective. And my classmates were talking. I had a really small class of about maybe 10 Black kids, no more than 10 in my program. And half of us, we were all Black, but half of us identified with being African American, and the other legitimate half did not. I had a bunch of friends who were first or second generation immigrants who came to the United States, and their stories relate more to the immigrant experience as opposed to the African American experience. So I had friends who identified as Nigerian American because their family was from Nigeria. I had a really tight friend who is from Ethiopia, so she identifies as Ethiopian. Um, I had another friend, I had two friends actually who identified as Jamaican American. I even had one friend who just straight up identified as Jamaican. No American attached. She was not super tight with that American aspect of her identity. She knew she'd go back to Jamaica in a heartbeat if she could. So she really identified with being Jamaican. However, it was expected that all of our different identities and histories would be encapsulated not under the term Black, but under the term African American. And I remember sitting there talking to my friends, and they were like, I don't really relate to being African American because, yeah, my roots are in Africa the way that all people's roots are in Africa. I guess if you go all the way back to the motherland, most of us can find our origins in Africa. But a lot of their family history started in Jamaica, started in Nigeria, started in Ethiopia. And so, yeah, they felt like they were African, but either they felt more African than American, or they didn't really connect with that American side of themselves. And so their whole experience was defined more by being an immigrant than just by being African American. However, they all identified with being Black. And that kind of brings me to my next point is that not even all African Americans identify with being African or American. A lot of African American people identify more with being Black. And that is because not all of us feel tied to either one of those identities. So, for example, I know myself, I studied abroad a couple of years ago. Everybody in my class was white except for me and the one other Black kid that I like bullied to go on this trip with me. And we were all sitting in a circle, and all the white kids were talking about their family ancestry. And this one person was like, yeah, my family just immigrated over here from Germany. So, like, my grandparents are still back home in Germany, but, like, I'm here. I had some other friends who were like, oh, I'm like 7% French and 14% Greek and 23% Irish. Like, they kind of knew their whole genealogy, and they were sharing and they were going, on and on and on. And they look at me and they go, Jordan, where are you from? And I was like, I never thought this question could be asked offensively in this context, but okay. And I was like, I don't know where I'm from. Like, I'm from North Carolina, which, I am from North Carolina. Shout out to the 336. But I was like, I'm from United States. I'm from North Carolina. And they were like, no, 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 no. Like, where are you really from? And I was like, did no one teach you not to ask that question? But I answered anyway. I was like, I don't know where I'm from. Like, my family history is we got off the boat in North Carolina. We stayed in North Carolina. My grandmother was a sharecropper. Her mama was a sharecropper. Someone else was a sharecropper, all the way back to slavery, all the way back to the original boat. So as a result, my entire family line, my entire relatives, everything I have is wrapped up in that fresh off the boat generations and generations ago identity. We don't really know where we're from in Africa. So I had to explain this to a group of white people who just simply were not getting it, unfortunately. And by the end of the conversation, they were going, oh my gosh, you should take a DNA test. You should do what you can to find out your ancestry, and you should do what you can to find out your roots, because they were curious. They felt like they were entitled to all of this information about me that I wasn't really seeking. Like, I understand that I have ancestral lines in Africa. I'm proud of my heritage, whatever it may be. However, I'm not running to go find it either. I feel very secure in my identity as, a United States citizen with, my roots being, slavery off the boat, the whole thing. Um, I was okay. I didn't identify super strongly with um, being African. I identified with being African as in that's where my roots were from, but it wasn't something I was just trying to learn about myself, not trying to pay, 40, 50, $100 to find out which parts of Africa I was from. That wasn't going to fill a hole in me because there was no hole I felt like I needed to fill. Flip side of that same coin, though, not all African Americans identify with being American. If you grew up in the United States, especially if you're a Black person growing up in the United States, you know that there's a very different cultural vibe here. In America, especially in white America, the pastime is baseball. If you grew up African American or Black, the pastime was basketball. If there was an event and a party, people would bring, apple pie to some white gatherings, maybe a casserole, because they're really into casseroles. If you're Black, you know that we brought pecan pie, we brought sweet potato pie, we brought mac and cheese, very different. And it's not to say that one thing is white and one thing is Black, but it is to say there was a big cultural difference there. There's a difference in a Black girl's, puff, like the one I have on my head today, because, I need to wash my hair, and a white woman's messy bun. There is a huge difference between the roots of hair. There's a huge difference between the way we dress versus the way they dress. Like, I would never buy Lululemon leggings, but other people other people might never be like, I'll never buy a large pair of hoops. And that's fine. But there is a distinct cultural difference. Additionally, sometimes it feels like even being American, it doesn't feel like America wants me. It doesn't feel like the United States wants me either. Black people are so much more disproportionately over policed and incarcerated. Black schools are often underfunded. Segregation is still an issue. We still have Black Lives Matter protests against police brutality, which have been going on since I was in middle school. And, I'm 24 now. So it's been a very long time. We're still fighting a lot of the same battles. And so sometimes it feels like the United States as a country doesn't want me here. And so I don't really identify with the American side of things. So I don't super identify with being African. I don't super identify with being American. I identify with being Black. And being Black is its own culture in and of itself. And it's not just, you know, it's not just rap music. It's not just big hoops and twerking. It's a whole bunch of cultural issues. And some of it stems from the fact that while times have changed and things are a little bit easier, things are also worse in some aspects. It's hard to talk to my grandmother who remembers segregation ending and her being like, we said it ended, but I can clearly see the economic disparities. Except now we won't even call it segregation. So it's like, what can we do to fix these systemic issues that we've now just kind of wiped the label off of, but didn't actually erase? If, we want to talk about how we desegregated housing and how we ended housing discrimination. So, we can check that off the box. But if Black people are still not paid enough, if Black people aren't making enough money, if Black people aren't unemployed at rates that are survivable, they will continue to live in poorer neighborhoods. Those poor neighborhoods will look like Black neighborhoods. And then we once again have Black neighborhoods and white neighborhoods, but less of a drive and less of a public urge to fix it, because all we did was really erase the label off of it. And so because some things are worse than they were, because so many things are the same as they were, being Black is this generational long, not quite trauma bonding, but like trauma bonding. It's like, oh, these are the people who will understand my struggle. These are the people who will watch my back when I walk down the street. These are the people who will record the police officer attacking me, instead of just, turning their heads and sliding by. These are the people who will invite me in off the street. These are the people who will be there to love and support me because they understand my struggle. At the same time, we have a great appreciation for our little inside jokes. We've experienced racism, so we can laugh at racism. We can laugh at the funny moments. We can make the hey Karen jokes and feel why it's funny because we also understand why it hurts. And so being a part of that overall identity is not something that only African Americans can experience, but any Black person in the United States can experience. And most Black people around the world, in some capacity, have this experience as taking trauma and turning it into something good. And because of that, I strongly identify with the Black experience as opposed to the African American identity. I do think that African American is a great subset of the Black identity. You know, there's like, it's like a big rainbow, and then you got like 6 or 7 pots of gold underneath. There are tons of pots of gold. There's so much rich history in each of them. The history of being African American and chattel slavery is vastly different from the history of being an immigrant from Ethiopia. However, by the time we both get to where we are in present day, we both fit under that overarching identity of being Black. And so we should honor being Black the same way we honor all other nationalities and all other proper nouns by capitalizing that B, because it's not just a word, it's not just a color, it's a shared identity. However, that's exactly why we shouldn't capitalize the W in white. Capitalizing the W in white perpetuates that same cycle of power. It's like, oh, you know, the white identity is, if the Black identity is real, then the white identity also has to be real. And that's not really the case, because if you've ever talked to a white person, and you know, I love y'all. Y'all are some cool people, some of you. But if I'm like, yo, like, where are you from? Like, where's your family originally from? Y'all can stop everything and go, oh my gosh, you know, I'm 17% German, I'm 18% Irish, I am 53% just from the United States. We immigrated, you know, way back in the day off the Mayflower. Like, your ability to track your identity all the way back means that you don't have a shared white identity. You might have a shared American identity, which might be, you know, apple pies and casseroles and maybe dancing a little offbeat. But overall, you have such close ties to where you're really from and to your own identity that capitalizing the white isn't really something that needs to be done, because you do have things you can lean on. You can rest on being American because you are confident in your American identity. So you can just capitalize the A as a proper noun. If you know, have immigrated from other countries, you can connect to those other countries. Like, yes, I'm American, but like I have French ancestry. So you can just capitalize the F and the A. So, and white Americans are different from white Europeans. And there's a huge difference. French people can say that they're French, capital F. And white Americans will probably say that they're American with French ancestry. But as a Black person, as an African American person who doesn't really feel African and doesn't really feel American necessarily, it's like this weird little niche spot that my identity exists in. And I think that that identity is something that needs to be honored and protected and treated with the same type of respect as we treat all other proper nouns. So overall, I think that because the Black experience is made up of our own, you know, little differences, there is an overarching feeling that we all share. There is, you know, maybe my roots are different from my friend's roots, but at the end of the day, our experiences are going to be similar because we are similar color. Because we are both Black, we will both experience microaggressions, for example, while two white people might never experience microaggressions. They might experience them for something completely different that isn't tied to their racial identity. And so because of the diaspora, because we have so many of our roots lost throughout, you know, the entire world and throughout history, our connection to each other is in that Black identity in a way that it's really not for white people, because it doesn't have to be. White folk have the privilege to know who they are and where they come from, and Black folk don't have that. So reparations, capitalize the B in Black. That's really the highlight of it. So while you're going about your day this Black History Month, while you are learning more about Black history and celebrating Black history, I encourage you all to keep capitalizing the B in Black, not just this month, but every single day, because it's a proper noun and it should be treated as a proper noun. Now, before I head out, I want to take a minute for our mental health. I know that this show can start addressing some heavy themes. And so at the end of all of these shows, I just want to take a moment and encourage you all to do something for your mental health. So this week, I encourage you all to set boundaries with people, set boundaries with yourself. If your mom is getting on your nerves, if she's making you feel some type of way, it's okay to set a boundary. Be like, hey, I'd appreciate when you talk to me that way. If you have a friend who's always, hitting you up, asking for money, and you're sick of it, they don't ever pay you back, whatever it may be, say like, hey, I'm not gonna give you any more money until you pay me back, until you get that figured out, because I'm not a bank. I'm your friend. Um, Set boundaries with yourself. If you know you've eaten 6 cookies today and you're gluten intolerant and you're lactose intolerant and you keep knocking down every batch of cookies with a glass of milk, tell yourself to stop. Set boundaries with yourself, and your mental health will thank you. And I thank you too. Thank you so much for coming and learning and growing with me today. And I will see you all again real soon. Bye.